Now we come to chapter 22. It may be the most fun chapter in the entire book, especially as you read it. Just kind of note, the kind of the voice that you would expect that Screwtape would be using through this. A lot of it is sarcastic, a lot of it is condescending, a lot of it is excited, but it's just kind of a fun chapter to go through. Even at the beginning, once again, Screwtape is challenging Wormwood again about the secret police coming to look into the things that he said. And it's another one of these warnings. And he has that great line, "Meanwhile, I've enclosed a little booklet just issued on the new House of Correction for Incompetent Tempters. It is profusely illustrated, and you'll not find a dull page in it." So what we find out now is that the man, the patient, has met a girl, but it's not the girl that Screwtape would want. He says, "I've looked up this girl's dossier and I'm horrified at what I find. Not only a Christian, but such a Christian. A vile, sneaking, simpering, demure, monosyllabic, mouse-like, watery, insignificant, virginal bread and butter miss. The little brute. She makes me vomit. She stinks and scalds through the very pages of the dossier. It drives me mad the way the world has worsened. We would have had her in the arena in the old days." Again, he's trying to portray her as this evil, terrible, awful thing, but yet she's probably a very nice person, kind of almost as frightening as a kitten. But to the devils, that's frightening. She's authentic. She is truly a Christian trying to live out her life and do it as well as she can, without a lot of fanfare, without a lot of fuss. And that line, "We'd have had her to the arena in the old days." Well, let's think about how well that worked out. Yes, there were ones like that who went to the arena. There's some of those ones we mentioned when we used the first Eucharistic prayer. We talk about Agatha, Cecilia, Anastasia. We talk about those saints. But she is described as a two-faced little cheat. I know the sort, who looks as if she would faint at the sight of blood and then dies with a smile. A cheat every way. Looks as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, and yet has a satirical wit. The sort of creature who would find me funny. Filthy, insipid, little prude, yet ready to fall into this booby's arms like any other breeding animal. Again, you can see the contempt that he has for this person because it's somebody that they just don't understand. The devils just can't get. But, we hear about those great martyrs of the church. They act as if they faint at the sight of blood and then die with a smile. It's a really good image for this woman who doesn't seem to have a lot of what the world would see as that great and magnificent courage, except when she's called on it for her faith. And again, that's when it all matters, is that, like those martyrs we look to, who are willing to die for their faith, willing to give their lives so easily for their Lord. We have a great set of words in the next paragraph where we hear we're being told about the miserific vision, again, to be the opposite of the beatific vision. Wormwood is told, "There are things for humans to do all day long without his minding in the least. Sleeping, washing, eating, drinking, making love, playing, praying, working. Everything has to be twisted before it is of any use to us. We fight under cruel disadvantages. Nothing is naturally on our side." As we talked about in a previous chapter, again, all things are good. God created things to be good. It's only when they're used wrongly, only when they're used in a way that they're not meant to be, only when the devil twists them can they be used for his advantage. Only when the devil twists them can they be used in the way that he wants them to be used by us in order to lead us to him. Of course, the problem with this woman is that her whole family and those around her are very much like her. Screwtape says, "Could you not see that the very house she lives in is one that ought never to have been entered? The whole place reeks of that deadly odor. The very gardener, though he has only been there 5 years, is beginning to acquire it. Even guests, after a weekend visit, carry some of the smell away with them. The dog and cat are tainted with them, and the house is full of the impenetrable mystery." Again, it is that holiness that is contagious. It is that holiness that this family puts off, that people start to catch on to. They start to notice it. They start to say, maybe, hey, these people are living life differently than everybody else. What is it that's going on with them? Maybe that's the way we're called to be living as well. The people would see the way we live and start to wonder how it is that we live differently than many other people in our world do. And they might be attracted to it. We are told about how the house, this family bears a sickening resemblance to the description that one human writer made of heaven. The regions where there is only life, and therefore all that is not music, is silence. That writer was a fellow named George MacDonald. He died in 1905. He was a Scottish author and poet and a Christian minister. He wrote a lot in the world of fantasy. We might call them fairy tales, but more like fantasy tales. And if you really want to know the people that he influenced, it was kind of the who's who of people writing fantasy stories in the first half, especially, of the 20th century. People like Lewis Carroll, J.M. Barrie, who did Peter Pan, even that Mark Twain is noted, L. Frank Baum, who did The Wizard of Oz, Richard Adams, Hilaire Belloc, G.K. Chesterton, Tolkien, but especially Lewis himself. Lewis saw him as the great master writer. It was probably from his stories that would have inspired Lewis to write what we now know as the Chronicles of Narnia. But he has that line that the regions where there is only life, and therefore all that is not music, is silence. Screwtape says, "Music and silence, how I detest them both." He describes that no square inch of infernal space and no moment of infernal time has been surrendered to either of those abominable forces. All has been occupied by noise. Again, that's the idea of that noise versus what is harmony, or lacking what is not harmony is silence. Those are the two great things for which we look, to put voices together, to show that we're all working together, or to spend that time in silence. Perhaps silence is maybe one of those things that we need even more of in our world today. There is so much out there that is noise. There is so much that, whether there's always music in the background in a restaurant, music in the background in a store, something going on all the time. I often suggest for Lent, but maybe even just every once in a while, if you're going on a drive, something a little more than just 5 minutes or so. If you're going to go on a 15 or 20 minute, half-hour drive or more, shut the radio off for a period of time. Shut the radio off for the drive and see how that drive is different because you're sitting in silence. A few years back, I decided on my day off I was going to drive off to some various shrines all around. Some of them were maybe 2 to 3 hours away. I'd go there, pray for a little while, and then drive home. I actually found the best part of the trip was driving in silence without the radio. Screwtape believes the melodies and silences of heaven will be shouted down in the end. But he says, I admit we are not yet loud enough or anything like it. And then we have this break. We're told the manuscript breaks off and is resumed by a different hand. And we hear Screwtape writing or dictating. In the heat of composition, I find that I have inadvertently allowed myself to assume the form of a large centipede. I am accordingly dictating the rest to my secretary. Now that the transformation is complete, I recognize it as a periodical phenomenon. Some rumor has it that it's reached the humans, and a distorted account of it appears in the poet Milton, with a ridiculous addition that such changes of shape are punishment imposed upon us by the enemy. A modern writer, someone with a name like Shaw, probably George Bernard Shaw, has however grasped the truth. Transformation proceeds from within, and it is a glorious manifestation of that life force which our Father would worship if he worshiped anything but himself. Basically, that ugliness that was in Screwtape as he was ranting and raving and going on in this letter ultimately transforms him, causes him to become that thing that he really doesn't, that he truly is, that kind of beast of a centipede, that insect. Just as a note, for this chapter, one of my favorite versions of the audio of the Screwtape letters is read by John Cleese, that member of Monty Python. He's been in a lot of other things as well, A Fish Called Wanda. He does this chapter magnificently. He gets all excited and apoplectic and going on and on and on. And then as he breaks and becomes that centipede, it is a great thing to listen to. You can find it on YouTube. Again, look on the bottom of this presentation. We'll have the link to that YouTube video that you can sit and listen to Cleese reading this particular chapter. So again, any other questions? Let me know. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.